Hi guys, it's Marc Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Marc Zicree of Space Command, and also Marc Zicree of Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek New Voyages, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, etc. But I wanted to talk about the second episode of Picard, which I just saw. Now, I posted about the first one. We got a lot of response up and down. And, I'm watching it, and it's well made, well produced, looks good. But I have some challenges with it. See, the challenge is that anytime you do Star Trek, you want to do something that's in the tradition, but also expands the storyline and in an interesting way. So they definitely are doing some interesting things. I mean, the fact that they found a dormant Borg cube and are exploring it and trying to unlock its secrets, that's very interesting. And it's almost like walking into a mousetrap that's primed with a piece of cheese. But here's my dilemma. Back when we were doing episodes where the entire episode had to be in 1 hour, like Far Beyond the Stars, for instance, or the First Contact episode of Star Trek, you knew that you had to have your beginning, middle, and end in 1 hour. And you could build toward a larger story, but you had to tell a story in that hour. And that meant that you had to get on with it. So you didn't waste a lot of time in exposition if you could help it. You didn't waste a lot of time in terms of trying to find something that would take you to the next step in the story. You just went there. So if they were looking for something on a computer, they'd find it instantly. So, oh, here's how we can find this person. Off we go. And so that left you time for A, the drama, and B, the action. and along the way, you'd have a profound insight, you'd have a moving storyline, all that stuff. The problem with the new way TV shows are done is that if you have 10 hours to tell one story or 13 hours to tell one story, you can easily get into a very lethargic pacing. And you can very easily fall into a lot of exposition, a lot of steps that really don't do much. And I'm finding Picard to have a little bit of a slow pace, and it gets me antsy. And just to give you an example, and again, I think it's a well-done show. I think it's an interesting show. Michael Chabon, who's one of the writers on it, wrote The Yiddish Policeman's Union, which is a book I very much love and which won the Hugo for Best Novel. I highly recommend it, particularly the Audible version. The audiobook that's read by Peter Riegert is really particularly terrific. But that said, here's the challenge I have with Picard, and the challenge that I have with the second episode of Picard. Picard is trying to find out some stuff. Like, this girl shows up, she gets killed in the first episode, he finds out that she's got a twin. I won't go into all the details of that, and now he's going to try and track that one down. So if it were a 1 hour episode to tell this story, he would, say to somebody, well, find this girl, and they'd say, oh, we found her, and then off they go. But of course, because it's taking much longer, it's like, well, let's talk and 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 talk about the backstory and all this stuff, and it just takes a long time. Plus, the Romulans are in it, and originally in the first season of Star Trek, when they did Balance of Terror, which was the episode that introduced the Romulans, Mark Leonard played the captain of a Romulan ship, and it wasn't the Earth's most brilliant notion, the Romulans. They were basically, the gag was, it was a mashup of The Enemy Below, which is a submarine movie with Kurt Jurgens and Robert Mitchum, where it's a cat and mouse thing between two submarines, so it's very much the same storyline, which I'm sure they were very aware of. And also, it's the notion of Mr. Spock is one of our guys, but then when we see these Romulans that we've never encountered before, and we've never seen them, even though there was a war between us, they look like Vulcans, and so is Spock loyal to us, or is he a secret agent for these Romulan guys? So it spreads distrust of Spock among the xenophobes on the ship. And, okay, fine. It's an episode I very much like. The Romulan warbird was a very cool design and very simple design. And Mark Leonard was terrific, and he was so good, in fact, that they brought him back the next season to play Spock's father, and he was great in that role, too. He had a great gravitas. And the whole notion of the Romulans, they're named after kind of the Romans, because the notion was they're sort of like Romans. In fact, one of the ranks they have is Centurion, which is a Roman rank, and they've got this sense of honor, and they seem a little bit formal. So sort of space Romans. Okay, cool. And but what that left us with is there's not much that's interesting about them once you get past that. And so the Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes that dealt with Romulans. There was a two-part episode with Spock going to the Romulan planet, and it's like kind of a snooze fest in its way. And then they have the Romulans and the Remans in one of the Star Trek movies, and it's like, really, yeah, okay, but they're, who the hell are the Romulans? In this series, they're treating them sort of like regular folks. His housekeepers, Picard's housekeepers are a Romulan couple, and they're like, one of them's sort of got a receding hairline, or he's bald or whatever, and it's like, and the other one has a Scottish accent, and it's like, who the hell are these people, and what makes them different from humans? I'm not, Whereas Vulcans, it was always very, very, very clear who and what Vulcans were, and that, which was great. It made them interesting. So the lack of delineation of the Romulans is problematical, and also the fact that they say, well, the Romulans keep their secrets, and we've got this secret cadre of evil Romulans, and it's like, oh, I don't know. It's like, again, how does this relate to a profound truth in our lives? How is this, how is this insightful in any way? But I reserve judgment. We'll see where the season goes, but that's a challenge. And also, they're introducing us to all these characters who are initially not very interesting. So, for instance, the girl that Picard is tracking, and the Romulan guy with a beard that she's sleeping with, and and Picard's housekeepers. It's like, oh, who are these people? Why are we spending so much time with them? I don't know who they are. I don't know why I should care about these people. They all seem kind of bland, and they're written to serve the plot. It's very, very expository. And we're not really getting much. Everyone's kind of arch. And then Picard goes to Starfleet and says to an admiral, I want my ship back. I want my command back. Or he wants a ship. And she says, no, Jean-Luc Picard, go to hell. And which they always said to Shatner, and he always had to steal a ship or whatever, whether it was the Enterprise or, Klingon ship or whatever. But it gets a little tiresome. It gets a little been there, done that. And then the biggest problem that I had with it was at one point in the story, Picard is determined to get a ship and get a crew and find this girl and blah, blah, blah. And, and we know the Borgs are going to be involved, and we've seen, some of the deactivated Borgs, and that's kind of cool. But meantime, at one point he says, well, I could reach out and ask Geordi, LaForge, and Riker, and, Worf, but they'd say yes, and that wouldn't be fair. They'd be doing it just kind of to help me, as has every crew in every Star Trek episode or movie ever. If you've seen Wrath of Khan, you pretty much get the drill, and or any of them. But the problem is that in the trailers for Star Trek Picard, you've seen that we have Data, and we've got Riker, and we've got Troy, and you've got 7 of 9. And so it's like, yeah, pick up the phone, call those folks. We'd like to, that would be terrific. A crew of Geordi and reassembled Data and Riker and Troy and, 7 of 9 to spice things up. That's the show I'd like to see. Just like when they finally did like Captain Pike. It's like, and there he is with Spock and number 1. I want to see that show. It's like, I don't want to spend a season getting to know these new characters, because they're not as interesting as all these other characters. I mean, even the first season of Star Trek: The Next Generation, when it wasn't working, before Michael Piller came aboard, at least the actors were interesting. Riker and all of these different characters, you had this sense that these were very interesting and very different actors from each other, and if they just gave them good scripts, they'd do terrifically well, which is exactly what happened. So, again, Picard, some people love Picard. If you love Picard, absolutely fine. I do not need people to agree with me at all. And, but if you don't, or if it's not quite what you want it to be, maybe it'll click in eventually. Patrick Stewart is still very classy. I'm sorry that I said that he looked old. It was an unfair comment. He's still got a lot of power as an actor. And, and then they also, by the way, throw in this thing about space dementia, space senility. And again, it's like in all these centuries from now, they couldn't cure dementia, really. They say, well, we can cure some of it, but not all of it. Okay. Again, it seems more like a red herring or unnecessary. I don't really want to go down that road. And it's in that story, So, But okay, so in conclusion, I'm going to keep watching it. I'm going to keep seeing what I think of it. I'm rooting for it. I'm rooting for Star Trek Discovery for that matter. And also, if you want to see how I handle this stuff, watch World Enough and Time, the Star Trek Sulu episode that's, that I'm very proud of. It's here on Mr. Sci-Fi. You can watch it for free. And also, we're going to be launching the Space Command web series very, very soon, and you can watch that as well. So that's about it for now. Thanks for checking in, guys, and we'll talk really soon. Bye-bye.